when you are a business owner, you're running things and you're making sales, something's working, but then things aren't working. You just, like you said, it's muddy. You don't know what it is. A lot of us will get online, go to Google, talk to our friends, go to YouTube, whatever it is. And those just because we're trying to solve problems. And unfortunately, there's a lot of marketers who will just sell you the thing that they do. They end up selling you medicine without diagnosing the illness.
You know, the last time we talked, the one nugget that I took was connecting ministry to business.
Yeah.
And I don't know, you know, when I think about my background with the church, there's like this separation of church and state kind of mindset.
Right.
And that's
Jesus stuff and business stuff. Right.
Yeah. So reconnect me on that loop again.
Yeah. So for me, where there's a couple points of how it transitioned for me, and then also where I ended up discovering the connection versus like knowing it was there would probably be the best way I would say it. So when I transitioned into doing business, what I found when I started talking to business people about business things was that's really how my mind operates a lot, is like, let's figure out the problem. Let's quickly find a solution. Let's act on it. Let's move on it. Let's throw some money at it. And those were things that when I was working in the church, like we were having those conversations, but I didn't know any different, but I was like, man, this is taking like 6-7 months. And then I got in the business environment, it would take like 6 or 7 weeks. And I was like, ooh, this is exciting because people are just ready to move a little quicker. Because just the way that when you're in business, you're like trying to make a bottom line dollar. So people are typically trying to use money to do that faster. When you're in a ministry and a nonprofit space, you're more trying to, how little resources can we use and get the most impact out of it? It's just a different way that processes get put into place and problems get solved. And so what I'm trying to say there is I was always, my brain was always thinking at a different pace when I was in a ministry environment that I don't think I even at the time knew that I was getting frustrated in. I was like, man, it's taking forever, you know, and like, can't we just go ahead and do this? Or why do we have to talk about this again or whatever else? And so when I switched into trying to work on my business and working with business owners, there was a little bit of a refreshment, honestly, that came. That was like, oh, this is the better context for this kind of work. Not it's good or bad, but like this is where that playground really is more useful, as opposed to trying to push and push and push on speed and whatever. It'd be like people were already ready to do that. And so that was more of a surprise for me in that of kind of how my mindset was working in both places. The other thing that ended up showing up was, and you know this now yourself being in business for as long as you've been in business, is that so much of how business gets done, how sales happen, how whatever it is that gets sold gets delivered really just represents the quality of the relationship, the quality of the product, the quality of the service. And because I am a Christian and a believer and Jesus is a part of my life, and I've been kind of operating under those values for so long, I just assumed that when somebody paid you to do something and there was a timeline expectation, that it should be normal that you would do it on time at the quality that you said it would be. And I was like, that's obviously what you do. And as I kept doing that, people were like, man, like you got this done early, or this is a lot better than I thought it was going to be, or you guys really kept me in the loop and communicated with me. No, the other people I worked with, they would just disappear and I didn't know where they were. And you're like, nobody else does that? Like, I just thought it was how you should treat people, right? Yeah. And so that was a surprise to me that I just didn't know was coming into it, where the overlap of how I did business was being informed by just things that I valued because of how I think people should be treated and honored and respected. And then just some of the soft skills that come from ministry of trying to ask questions and be a listener and like actually like care about what's going on with the turmoil that somebody has that they're going through, business problem, personal problem. There's a lot of that kind of pastoral skill set that just accidentally really bleeds into that space of like, man, okay, that sounds really hard. Like, what do you guys do? Man, okay, that was probably frustrating. Like, I'm just can empathize with people in a business problem. it just, I didn't realize that was also going to show up there. I just thought, well, you pay money and things happen, but all of a sudden people like, and just like I would too, like you actually care about my problem, not just here's a deal, give me some money, you know? And so I kind of rambled there for a minute, but that's good initial crossover points that I just didn't realize overlap that I brought into it. And then I discovered while I was doing the work of like, oh, there's a lot of the similarities here, just how you treat people and care about people and do good stuff. Yeah, that actually has a good impact in the way you do business and what you're trying to do for people.
Yeah, you know, as you're telling that, the light bulbs that were going off with me, I heard character.
Mm-hmm.
Character matters, right?
Yeah.
So the thing about I have found with character on the surface, when people say, "Oh, he's a good character," right? He has good character. She has good character, or not good character. But what you're describing, what that looks like in this world, whether it's in the world of ministry or whether it's in the world of business, character matters.
Yeah.
And you put that forefront. So we've all run into people of shady character, right? And how we deal with. So handling, when you have a client, let's just say you're starting to sense that there's the character level they have is not matching up with character level that you have.
Yeah.
What does that look like? Because from a pastoral standpoint, I have an idea how you handle that, but from a business standpoint, is it the same too, or how do you do that?
Yeah. So I think I've been fortunate that I haven't ever had anybody paying me money and asking me to do things that just shouldn't be done, thankfully. And I don't know, I didn't do anything on purpose to make that happen. I do think that the kind of business owner that I end up attracting, or because I have this kind of story brand messaging framework as a part of where I help people with, that it seems to attract a lot of people who, like, a big thing in that framework is like, you're not the hero of the story, your customer is, and your product really helps them solve a problem. And usually businesses that are attracted to that framework already operate that way as a company. They just have trouble communicating that with their marketing messaging. And so it's like they love when their customers have success. They love the transformation they have. They love when the light bulbs go off and the moments happen for their customers, but they have a hard time saying it when to get new customers. And so anyway, all I'd say, I think there's like a default integrity and kind of mode of operation that a lot of the people I've just ended up having the privilege to work with, they already kind of care about their customers, thankfully, and they're not trying to pull one over and pull a quick win and kind of undercut or whatever. And that, I mean, or I'm just accidentally good at weeding them out. I don't know. So thankfully, I just haven't had that to overcome that I can remember or think through. Yeah. And so I just haven't had somebody like, man, that's shady, I'm not doing that. I haven't had to have that conversation. I would if it came up. Like, I don't think that's very honest. I think you're going to lose some customers as a result of that. But I haven't had anybody that I've had to stop the relationship or cut somebody off. Or if they're doing it, they're not asking me to do it, they're doing it themselves. I don't know.
Yeah. You know, I've, in my previous life, back when I was in the catering business, I had some shady characters that they would say, okay, I need you to cater this event, and I'd give them a quote, and they're like, okay, my company's paying for that. Can you add like another $900 to that, and we'll call that? It's that's happened more.
Like, we'll split the difference of the over.
No,
they were taking themselves, right?
No, you keep your $900 or whatever it is, and then I get the rest, kind of thing, and. Yeah, there was a lot of, and you don't see that coming a lot of times.
Yeah, it's a surprising thing to show up,
and it comes from surprising people,
right?
And for me, I didn't have any loss, right? So I still charged and got paid for my services, and I got the profit and everything that I wanted out of the job. But boy, I struggled with sleeping at night.
Sure,
and because I know that they manipulated their company, and their company was paying for it.
Right.
It wasn't their money, so to speak. But I can tell you that's I hope you never end up in that, because for me, it was more about the sleepless night. It's like,
Yeah.
no, that's not right.
Yeah.
Character matters.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, where I've had more sleepless nights is more like, there's been some situations where we set out a plan to pull something off. Hey, we're going to run a campaign or put a new offer together or help you kind of launch something or whatever else. And internally, I've had the expectation of results that we didn't hit. And it was a gut expectation. There wasn't anything to back it up. I was like, I think we could probably get here, and we didn't. There were some results, and I don't even know on some of those situations if it was like the client, they didn't know what to expect. I didn't promise anything. But I was like, man, I don't think we did as good as we should have. I have had one situation, thankfully the only time I've had to do this, where I had to give somebody a full refund. And it was early on when I just kind of started. It was around COVID time too, which kind of messed a lot of communication stuff up. But basically, I'd started working on a project with somebody, and they'd been put on a automatic payment situation. Hey, we're going to pay this over time, it was a bunch of writing work that we were going to do. And there's a breakdown of the communication between the person managing the project at the time. And I checked in, and I sent them stuff, and it was just weird. I hadn't heard back anything, but it went on for months, like longer than it was normal. And I just was kind of letting it go on. And finally I looked into it, and like basically had their email address wrong. And I reached out back, and hey, they two things happened. One, they were a large enough company that they didn't even realize they were still getting charged. And they just thought we had disappeared and kind of ghosted them. And I was like, that is totally on me, my fault. And I, apologized and quickly went through this stuff. And I was like, listen, I gave them the choice, like, we're going to give you all the work either way. We can kind of finish it, and I'm not going to charge you any more because they had a lot more they owed, or I'll just give you a refund and give you where we're at right now. And they were like, hey, let's just do that. But they like appreciated the fact, they're like, obviously we don't want to move on, but thank you for like figuring it out and providing a quick solution. But I mean, and I learned a lot from that experience of just checking in communication channels. Things don't need to go on longer. I was new to building the business side of it, and had enough that I was trying to manage on my own that I just wasn't paying enough attention to. But, it still informs how we do things today because of that. I mean, there was a week of just like, what did I do? And worried that I ruined my reputation and had just kind of put a bad name, something out there with somebody that just, they have a reason to not trust and tell other people not to trust us and that kind of stuff. And there was no collateral damage, thankfully, from it. I think I was able to restore the baseline of trust with the client, thankfully. But man, it tore me up for a while too, because that just stuff messes you up when you're like, man, I didn't do what there's money that's been paid that nothing's been done for it, and so it's not a fun place to be. But you learn a lot from that, for sure.
Don't you? I mean, the hard way.
Yeah.
And so you bring up interesting clarity.
Yeah.
Right. So what you just described was there was not clarity between you, and it happened to be from an email communication. There was cloud. So let's talk a little bit about clarity, because it's interesting. The work that you do is trying to.
Yep.
I think you have a saying somewhere with clarity in there.
Yeah, clarity. Yeah, well, yeah. The clarity always wins. Is my website. Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Yeah, I teed that up perfectly.
Yeah, there you go. .com. There you go. If you're following along at home, right?
So let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah.
This is where I really wanted to go. I mean, so let's talk a little bit about clarity. So let me give you my perspective as somebody who would come to you and say, I need help with my brand.
Right.
The water is muddy, and I know it's muddy. I don't know what muddied it. I don't know what I'm doing here. I just know I need help with this. How would you handle a person that's completely lost? Mm-hmm. They just know that, they don't even know which way to grab for the life preserver.
100%. That's a great question. And a lot of people are in that boat. And so, I have something that we do now is really like almost like a first step with people, is something we call a clarity first diagnostic. And it's literally designed around that thing, or that situation. And so what I've found is that when you are a business owner of, this in a kind of in that small, medium business size, you're running things and you're making sales, something's working, but then things aren't working. You just, like you said, it's muddy. You don't know what it is. A lot of us will get online, go to Google, talk to our friends, go to YouTube, whatever it is. And those just because we're trying to solve problems. And what we end up with is a lot of a various list of potential tactics to try. Maybe I should do SEO. Maybe I should run some ads. Maybe I need videos. Maybe I should revamp my website. I don't know. Maybe we should do a podcast. I mean, there's a variety of things that pop up. And unfortunately, there's a lot of marketers who will just sell you the thing that they do because they know it works to help. They're good at it. But what they don't take time, they end up selling you medicine without diagnosing the illness. And so where we are trying to start solving that is, you know what, we're going to take a look first and say, let's actually figure out what could potentially be going on, get an objective view of your current sales and marketing cycle. And so that if there's holes in it, then you're pointing money at those things and not just something I happen to sell. And so, which it's become it's very eye-opening. I'd say frankly, very alleviating when people go through the process, because you're like, oh, okay. Because they see things. And then, Alan, half the time, there's probably 10 or 12 things that we discover that are small that they can just do. They don't need to pay anybody to do. It's just like, you know what? Your salespeople aren't calling people back. Oh, we should do that. But they haven't really thought about some of these things that they're not really a marketing thing. It's more just a sales process thing. And so it's basically taken through there's a progression of steps that people go through, from like discovering who you are for the first time. Like, they didn't know you existed. They go through all these about eight or nine steps to where now they love you and they're referring people to you. And so we kind of taken through a quick conversation of each of those steps and ask, what are you doing here? How do you feel like it goes? Is it good, bad? How would you rate it? And then why would you rate it that way? And we always find things that are in all of those buckets. Some of them they're doing great, and some of them they're not doing great, or some of them they never even thought about them. And so it's a way that then if we can help them, we can't help do everything, but if there's things that we can do to help, great. We can help you with this, this, and this. But typically, we're always recommending things that they do first. Some of it we can help with. Some of it they need to do themselves. Some of it they may need to get somebody else to do that we don't help with. But it's usually we're trying to find holes in a leaky bucket. That's what I call it. So they're not just keep pouring water in it and like, well, this SEO guy said he needs SEO. Well, what's he sell? He sells SEO. Well, why do you think he told you you need SEO? Yeah. He happens to sell it, right? And I'm not putting, marketers aren't shady, but like, people who are specific with the service are really good at it. Yeah. And they do know it'll help them. And I'm not ever saying that you don't need those things. It's more like, what do you need to make the most impact? Because you only have so many dollars to spend right now. And so we really try to get clarity around what marketing things do you need to do, and then focus there first. And then here's other stuff, you need to pay attention to. And here's stuff, you're doing great. You know what? You don't need to pay anybody to do anything. Just keep doing what you're doing. Okay. But so many people, nobody's having that conversation with them. And so that's where we start with everybody, so that we can, again, because I don't want to come in and start doing stuff that doesn't work either. And be like, well, you paid me $10,000. I'm sorry you don't have clients. We did what we said we would do. When it turned out, their phones are broken, right? I mean, joking, but, silly stuff that you might be like, well, does your email account work? You should look at that, you can't discover unless somebody has like an objective whole picture conversation with you about it.
Yeah. It's interesting you brought that up. A lot of, from my perspective, what I do with business owners is, I do coaching. Yeah. And it always starts with trying to clear the water up and going back to those. And I don't want us to beat up on these people, but starting with the basics, like core values, mission, vision, I find I get a lot of pushback sometimes when I'm like, okay, we need to start there and then come forward. What's your experience with starting with what they think is elementary type stuff? What's your experience with that?
Yeah, well, there is a lot of eyebrow raising that will go on with it. Really? You think that's what we need to do? And because it seems some of the stuff seems so simple, elementary or whatever else. And And thankfully, I guess I've had, I mean, not thousands of reps, but have enough client stories, the varieties of industries. I'm like, look, they weren't doing it and we started doing it. And here's what happened. These people weren't doing it and they're making $8 million a year and they weren't ever emailing anybody. Guess what? We just started emailing people and they like added 20% to their revenue, and it cost a couple emails a month, you know, and they're like, oh, like you start to show them the possibilities of stuff. And that's the only way I've been able to overcome it. Just thankfully, because I have a couple of stories a handful of just great success stories that it does make an impact. But there is a little bit of you got to gain some trust and you got to gain some favor with people. And I think usually that, like even what I said earlier about like prescribing medicine before you diagnose an illness, I've started saying that more often, and people start to like, oh, okay, I get it, because I've been to the doctor and had a knee pain and it turns out that something in their hip was off or their upper back, you know, that everybody's had something that's kind of like, well, there's a symptom, but it turns out this is going on, that I think they can relate to. And usually, again, if you're not in startup mode or you're not in like enterprise level mode, most people in that kind of middle ground have tried and failed at enough things that they know might be missing something. But on the flip side, if somebody comes in like they just really know they need this specific thing, I'm usually giving a lot of pushback. And then at some point, I mean, sometimes if it's things that we do like a kind of copywriting or messaging or some of that stuff, I'll be like, okay, listen, I'll do this. This is what you said you want, but like you're paying me, and out of my professional integrity, I gotta tell you, I don't know if this is gonna solve your problem. So I will give you what you want, but I'm gonna come on the record and say, I don't know this is what you need right now. Yeah. And there's been people like, I'm okay with that. This will help me. I'm like, okay, well, let's do it. And so, because at the end of the day, they're paying their own money. And as long as they know what they're paying for or not paying for, then I'm okay with moving on. But yeah, we do have that I do navigate that conversation from time to time.
Yeah, you know, and this is along that same vein. A lot of people come to me and they're like, I have a sales issue, I have a revenue issue. They're focused at that, or they're looking at the P&L something, right? That's kind of their focus in this whole. Are we dealing with the symptoms or are we dealing with the cause?
Right.
Right. The symptom is cash flow. The cause is culture or messaging, or, you know, and helping them see that sometimes is very challenging at times. Right. And you mentioned trust several times in that process. And to me, that's where I guess from an advisor's standpoint is competency really matters.
Sure.
And not that you've got alphabet soup after your name. It's showing that you're competent in work history. So talk a little bit about, all right, I'm the challenging client, right? Let's role play here. Right. I hate role playing, but I'm going to role play here.
Yeah.
So I'm like, you know what? I got a sales issue. I don't understand my sales issue, right? So how do you help me see that from, how are you going to get trust?
Yeah. Usually, so what I found, and I guess I'm going to get a little bit of, what's a word, like, approach. Okay. I'm not going to go into that conversation myself in order to build trust with somebody and start trying to defend my position. And convincing them that I'm right. I just start asking them questions. Okay, so what's going on with your sales? Well, we're kind of down. Okay, so what do you sell? We sell this, this, and this. Okay, how is it delivered? Okay, this and this. Who's the salesperson? Is there one salesperson? Is there multiple? Okay, is the salesperson also connected into the delivery of it? No. Okay, how does that handoff happen? Okay. What about how do they find the salespeople? Are you guys doing cold calling? Are they running ads? Or are you doing like email marketing? Well, we do this and this. Okay, where do most of the calls come from? I don't really know. Okay, does your sales guys know? I don't think they might know. Okay, great. Well, and I'm asking a bunch of questions around all the nitpicky parts of the process that, for one, it's helping me piece together what might be going on. But usually by that point, people are I'm hoping it's like, oh, this guy really knows what's going on, and he knows more about, he's asked me questions I didn't even think to ask, which helps, I think, just without me being like, you're wrong, I'm smart.
Right.
I just start asking questions to get information. If you got a sales problem, okay, great. And then I'm thinking of all the potential ways that could be a problem and trying to connect the dots quickly if there's pushback. But also, at least in my business, I'm not going to do that for 2 hours over a free call. Like, let me solve your sales conundrum without you paying me any money, but it's more like, I think we need to look deeper into this and let's actually figure out the problem. And so that's again, a way if somebody's kind of coming in with their arms crossed, a little skeptical,
Yes.
I'm never going to be like, I promise I'm good. It's like, I'm just going to start demonstrating it by actually trying to help them by asking a ton of questions to really, in the minute, let's see if we can get to some roots of the problem right now.
Yeah.
And usually it puts people in a more humble posture, be like, okay, yeah, I didn't even think about that. And so, and I'm not being like, you idiot. I mean, I'm just, because they're not idiots. They're focused on other things.
Right. Yeah.
But if they're coming in and going to question my ability, then be like, well, let's talk. And I'll start, let me pick apart what you're telling me is wrong. And maybe you're right. And because I think it's also, I don't know if you've had this conversation, maybe you have, but like, I find it interesting that sometimes people will come on a sales call with me, but they don't really, it's like they already have it figured out. And I have had times like, okay, so what is it you need from me? Well, because it seems like you have it all figured out, and like, well, how am I going to help you with that? And I don't say it's sassy. I'm just like, that's literally,
why am I here?
Why do you call on a guy like me if you seem to already have the problem solved? Or is it you just need this thing done? Let's figure that out. And so those things can kind of diffuse some of that stuff, but again, I don't have that because I don't have a lot of outbound type of sales conversations where people are reluctantly getting on the phone with me. I don't find them having to disarm people very much because usually they're taking the step first.
Yeah.
Which usually if people are in that boat, they already are like, I think I need some help. And so they're not coming with well, let's see what this guy has to say.
Right. Yeah. You got 2 minutes, go.
Right. But, and on the clarity side too, I don't know if this is something else that people have found, I think, very helpful when I've just randomly talked about it. And so, you talked about the whole sales cycle, and we talked about that sales cycle clarity, what's actually broken. The other thing, when it comes to marketing things and sales things specifically, where I've also found people get hung up is there's, I don't know, 73 plus various things you could do as tactics to do, right? When I say marketing, you need to do some marketing. There's probably a list that pops in your head of what that means. And everybody's list is a little bit different. Oh, it's Facebook content. Oh, that's Instagram. Oh, that's a YouTube channel. Oh, that's SEO. Oh, that's, direct mail. Right.
Funny we just said that together.
Right. So you just have all these ideas about what marketing is.
Yeah.
But what I've found is that every piece of marketing falls within 3 types of buckets of like kind of what they are. And where people get mixed up is they get frustrated is they are choosing to do one type of marketing activity, but they're expecting it to perform it like another one. Okay. And so the breakdown is basically, and it's just because we're in Arkansas, everything is kind of agricultural. It's basically everything's either farming or it's fishing or it's hunting. Everything falls in one of those categories. And so if you have an email list and you're building a kind of a relationship with customers, you're sending them something out once a month, that's your farm. Like you're trying to build that system up. Fishing is like, it's SEO. It's anything that you can think of where I'm putting a hook in the water, hoping a fish swims by. You go to a networking event, organic social content. I hope somebody sees this and reacts to it, right? You're putting good bait in the water, but you're still dependent on the fish finding it and grabbing the hook, right? Or hunting is like, I'm going to put my ads in front of people, or I'm going to go knock on doors, or I'm going to go cold call people, right? Or I'm going to send mailers into somebody's mailbox to actually show up. You're paying money to put eyeballs on your stuff, right? You're kind of trying to hunt people down. And so typically what I feel like happens is people default to fishing activities. I'm going to go to this event. I'm going to post some content on LinkedIn. I'm going to work on my SEO, and I'm just going to sit back and wait for somebody to call me. which is legitimate. It's okay. It's not a bad thing to do, but then they expect hunting results. I sent an email out. Why didn't anybody buy? Immediately. Well, nobody buys from one email, right? That you have to. So a farm you have to nurture over time, and eventually it produces fruit, but it doesn't happen fast. Fishing, you can put as many hooks in the water. The only way to get more fish is better hooks and more hooks and finding where the fish congregate. But even then, you're still waiting on them to bite, right? If I help realtors make videos, then I should probably go hang out with realtors at the events they go to. But it doesn't mean they're going to hire me, but I have a lot higher likelihood if I show up where they are, right? And so you're kind of trying to find a place to fish. Or again, the hunting activities. Some of us just like to sit back and fish, but man, you don't have any money. You need to go hunt. You need to go call people. Hey, is this something that you need right now? Because there are people that do. They just don't know you exist yet. And so, but people get frustrated because they do one or the other and expect it to be producing the other kind of results. And usually it's fishing, expecting it to be either farm, like we got 100 people, or to hunt, work immediately, and it just doesn't. And so we'll kind of walk through people's tactics and what they're doing and kind of categorize them. This is a fishing thing. This is a hunting thing. This is a farming thing. And by default, very few people are farming, and they should be. That's really what you should be doing all the time, and because it gives you a result later. And most people are just fishing, but they think that they're hunting. And so it's like, if you can kind of get those things in order, then your expectations are, oh, I'm getting the right results for the activity I'm doing.
Yeah.
I'm just doing the wrong things, and I need to be doing something else. And so that's another way we kind of help get clarity around the kinds of things to do.
Yeah, until I was listening to all that at the very end, that the one thing that stood out to me was the expectations.
Yep.
And that disappointment that comes with all of that. And I've been guilty in the past of marketing, right? I called it marketing, but I didn't know what I was doing.
Sure.
Somebody, cute girl shows up wanting to sell ads in the paper. I'm like, that's a good idea. I haven't done ads in a while.
Right.
I had no idea what I was doing. I was responding to her coercion, right? And just throwing an ad in there and giving it a couple of months. That didn't work, and we're ditching that.
Right.
And I'm sure I was like a lot of people out there, right?
Yeah.
And it was the lack of understanding and appreciation for the effort that goes into it.
Right.
It wasn't clear to me.
Right.
It's just marketing. We do it. Everybody's supposed to do it.
Yeah.
Right?
It's just one big thing, and you just do it. But it doesn't all produce the same kind of results, which is, the expectation gets off on that. Like, again, it's all designed to do specific things, and is usually doing what it's designed to do. We just don't know what that is.
Yeah. When you miss on that expectation, I can't imagine what goes through my mother-in-law's mind when I walk in the door. The lack of expectation for her daughter was probably not me.
Right. This is not what I was thinking. Right.
Exactly what I was playing in my mind.
Yeah, I love it.
So let's go into, I'm going to stay on this theme of trust.
Okay.
Now, the last thing I want to ask around marketing and clarity and building trust. So now I'm buying into everything that you do as a client. We're doing this together, and we're starting to get a little bit of traction.
Yep.
So now the customers start coming in. How, when going back, we talked about people that we've worked with that didn't have good character. Once I start bringing, or this method starts bringing in clients.
Yep.
If I'm identifying that, okay, I appreciate their business, but what does that look like? Is that something where you shift gear? How do you handle something like that?
Like me, if it's my own customers, or if I'm advising a client.
You're advising a client, and the client's coming back going, you know what? I thought I was going to get a different type of client. I'm getting clients, but I think I want to shift my focus.
Yep.
And in my world, it could be, everybody, every few years, a business coach will say, you know what? I'm up my game a little bit. I was looking for $1 to $5 million business. Now I'm looking for $5 to $10 million, or 10 to 50 or whatever.
Right.
When the game changes like that, what does that look like for you?
Yeah. Like in me helping them and thinking through things. Yeah. So that's a great question. So, the first question I'll typically ask them on that is more like a sense of urgency with it. Is it like, well, if you switch tomorrow, is that going to mess your cash flow up? Is it like you're not going to be able to pay the bills? Like, do you have kind of enough of a runway to then make that pivot so that you don't, because you don't want to like lose, like you pivot tomorrow and all of a sudden you got no money, right? And that's not going to help you out. So you kind of thinking through a plan to make sure that you don't cut off your income source of whoever your clients are right now by going after potentially different clients. There's also the second question of, can some of the people that you're currently working with upgrade into whatever it is if you're trying to level up and increase your prices? Surely some of those people are going to go with you on that. You're going to lose some people also, but surely some people will go with you into that. And so just thinking through that so that whenever you start to pull that lever, you're not accidentally cutting the legs off your business. That's just more of a planning strategy, thinking. And so, but yeah, let's just do it. Like, let's make sure, okay, what's our time frame on that? Then the other side of it then is it's more, okay, great. Well, then what we have to do is is it a new offering? Is it the same offer? But is it how we position? We got to reposition it to speak to somebody that's in this category. If you're going from 1 to 5 million to 5 to 10 million, what are people that have $5 to $10 million revenue problem? Like what problems are they experiencing that are different than the person that are below in revenue range? Are there things different? Are they not? If there's some similar things, that's fine. If it really is like all the same problems, they just have more money to throw at it, then some of that is just a matter of elevating the luxury of the messaging, the luxury of the offer, make sure that the value that's coming from it is really well communicated. And then two, it can be literally as simple as like you just name them in the offer stuff. It's like, if you're a business that makes $5 to $10 million, then you should pay attention to these, however your marketing is. Like, you just need to be very specific and name the people you're working with so that they can raise their hand and be like, oh, that's me. Or like, that's not me. And so that's the very end game. Like you could do something as simple as that, but really it's that middle part of like, okay, is there a new offer, a new package, a new product, or is it the same thing, but you want to add more value to it somehow? Or some more things that come with it, or is it just a matter of you raising your prices and going after somebody bigger? Just whatever the game plan is, and then the marketing strategy from that is then, okay, then let's go find those people and get after that. But we got to make sure that we're speaking to them about who they are, their pain points, the issues they have, and they can, and again, in a way they can raise their hand and be like, that's me. If I only work with businesses in Louisiana, I need to make sure that I say Louisiana in this. So you know what I'm saying? So I'm not getting people from Nevada and Arizona, because you just have to make sure there's some way that people can wave their hand and be like, or like they can see them like, that's me. Okay. Enough to take the next step to be curious about you.
Yeah. All right. So now I'm going to switch gears a little bit on that. So restaurants are guilty of not wanting to raise prices. And the biggest pushback that restaurant owners will give is, I might run all my customers off.
Yep.
So how would that situation be different than what you just described?
Yeah. I mean, to some extent it's not. It's just, I think it's just it's a perception that we all have that we're just scared to raise prices. I don't think that you need to raise your prices every 6 months. That would be very frustrating, right? Like, especially if you're more at a higher level, like if your things cost more money than like $5 or $10, right? But, we all get frustrated that we go to the store and milk goes up every other week and like, what the heck? But guess what we still do? We still buy milk.
Yeah, what's up with the eggs?
Right. We still end up buying milk, but there's some people like, I'm not buying milk this week. They do make that choice, right? And so I think you don't want to make the decision and make that step just willy-nilly and all the time. You have to make sure that whatever you're offering is actually worth that much money, and also be prepared that like not everybody's gonna go with you. But I think it's Alan Bennett, One Page Marketing Plan. I think he says something like, you can raise your prices probably 10% tomorrow and nobody's going to blink an eye. And that's instantly 10% more revenue than you're making right now. He said, you might have one or two people that are like, I'm out, but like a 10% raise is not that big of a deal for most people. If it's a 25 or 30% jump, okay, then you get a plan for that. But, and again, the other angle on that is if you're just racing to the bottom on price all the time, and that's just, and I say this as gingerly as I can, that's the kind of customer you attract, which typically are the most frustrating people to deal with because they're just the complainers I don't feel like I got enough, right? They want the buffet versus the high quality plate, you know?
Yeah.
And so if you really want people who typically value the experience more and value the just are less of a hassle and less going to dig into every detail because you know you do a good service or whatever, and you don't want people asking 89 questions every day about it. If you raise your prices, you're going to get less of those kinds of people. Because, I mean, we all that way. I know, like, people that just, man, you can do the job, please do it. Great, it's done. I'm not like, well, exactly when are you going to show up and what time are you going to, like, if I got to, you know, thinking about a plumber coming to replace a water heater, I'm not like out there watching him do his work.
Yeah.
You know, but if I find the cheapest guy possible and I really think I could do it myself, and I might go out there and judge everything he's doing, but that's not the kind of person that I want to hire. I want to have as my customer. So does that make sense?
Yes,
and so, yeah, but it's scary. It's scary to do because there is a risk of somebody, I raise my prices and some people may not pay it. That's true. But if your food's really, really good and your restaurant's pretty full, then I think you raise your prices a little bit and those people are still going to come back. If your restaurant's empty, that's a different problem. Right. Raising your prices, they're going to fix that. So,
yeah. You know, I was going to end on that, but there was one thing that you mentioned in there, and I was thinking about line of sight and the three buckets that I'm going to explain here. And I'll go ahead with it. I was going to end there, but I've got one more thing. A situation that this would be that you and I both might work with the same customer or client on from a different lens. 3 buckets. So let's call it the Disney bucket, customer experience, the Walmart bucket, low price, and then let's call it the Apple bucket, right? It's about innovation and technology and all that. So you got 3 different buckets. I'm going to tell you a situation I ran into is I gave an assessment to a company. There's 3 partners, and I gave all of them the same questions. One of them described their business like Apple, one described it like Walmart, and one described their business like Disney. They were 3 business partners, and they had a completely different lens.
Yeah.
How do you clear that up?
Yeah.
Right? That's from a marketing standpoint. I know what, from a business coach standpoint, how I would address that. But to me, the marketing standpoint is like, how do you do that?
Right. Well, what that tells me, and if that actually happened,
it happened. Yes, that happened.
Tell me, my gut is that the guy who described it like Apple had more involved in the product itself.
Yep.
The guy who described it like Disney was more of the sales potential guy.
Yes.
The guy who described it like Walmart was probably more the financial guy or like the operations guy.
Yep.
Okay. And so
bingo.
Yeah. And so it makes sense out there looking at it because this is the coolest product you've ever seen. Okay, that's innovative. Or, man, this is going to change your life. You're going to have so much fun. It's going to, that's the Disney person. And so from a marketing perspective, marketing's job essentially is to make sales easier. It just, that's the relationship. They may not work hand in hand, but they shouldn't operate separately. There should be like a handoff of some kind or some sort of just positioning. It's helping. If marketing's doing its job, then the salespeople are having an easier time with their job. And so I'm going to take the sales perspective more serious, not serious, but that's going to have more weight in the conversation because they're customer facing. Operations guy, he's not dealing with customers every day and trying to get people to buy the product. He's just trying to make it work more efficiently. And so it doesn't mean none of that's true. It just means like that's not a customer interaction point. I mean, maybe it is. I don't know. And then the innovative, product guy, he's trying to make it as cool and as good as it is, but he's not the one, again, facing the customers. He's going to want to talk about how cool and the features and the specs and the details, which is there somewhere on a sheet somewhere for a customer to see, but that's not why they're buying it. And so the Disney person is probably going to, and I'm going to come in and sell it and just say, hey, listen, it doesn't mean you're wrong. It just means that if you want to make more sales, this is really more what we need to, this is where we need to lean into this perspective so that more people can engage with this thing that you think is really affordable and you think is really cool and innovative. And so they still get their outcome in it, but helping them to see it from a customer's perspective as opposed to an insider's perspective. And that's usually the conversation that if we're having some overlap or like some pushback from this executive team that we have to get into. Is like, listen, you're not wrong. It's just your customers don't care, or you're not wrong. They're just not going to understand that. Or I love my kids, and I can tell you details about their lives, and I love talking about them. But if I'm trying to like get you to hire them, I'm probably going to talk about a couple things. I'm not going to talk about everything. I'm not going to talk about when they go to the bathroom and what they like to eat. I'm going to tell you about their character. Now, you get what I'm saying? So like just doesn't mean it's not your kid, love it, but the things that they're trying to get to, you have to make sure that the people listening to that's what matters to them, and present it that way. And so that's usually how I would at least try to arm wrestle that conversation so that we can make traction together.
Yeah. It's interesting you say that, because my wife and I was reflecting back on when you talked about kids, babysitters, hiring a babysitter, right? We would hire the neighborhood girl down the road who doesn't even have a driver's license before we would hire somebody with this long resume of credentials.
Right.
Because you
knew her, there's some familiarity. She probably met your kids and they laughed and liked her. Okay, that's all I want.
You're talking anyway. That's where the squirrel hit right there.
Yeah.
So, but the thing I think to kind of wrap up where we've been here is, you've got a saying that clarity always wins, but clarity is a very complex animal that you have to deal with, and it's you have to break it down into a process that's now we've got down to the very bottom of where we need to, then it's working your way back up.
Yep.
It's not an easy process, is it?
No, and it takes some long, sloppy meetings and conversations, no matter what you're trying to figure out to get there. But we've all been there when we're like, oh, okay, right? When you feel that, and man, it's just energizing, and the team or whoever it is can, okay, now we can get there. But yeah, getting to that point is a windy, knotty mess that isn't simple. But yeah, there's a process to get through and kind of hack through. And so then when you get there, everybody's like, okay, cool, we can all row the boat in the same direction, or we're all going to be pointing our nose in the same direction, or we're all going to say the same thing. We're all going to agree that this is what we're trying to do, whatever it is. And it's freeing and liberating. That's where you get energy. And I'm sure the work that you're doing too, it's like, all right, let's go. And then people get excited about it.
Yeah. Getting them aligned.
Yeah. It's just a big breath of fresh air that's there. So, yeah.
Well, great. I appreciate you. This is our second time. Man.
Yeah.
This was even better than the first one was great. We really got into some good stuff.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It's good to see you in person and then get to chat and dig in stuff. I mean, God bless the people who listen to these podcasts, because we're all like talking about business, and I mean, that's just not everybody's thing, but some people we want to listen to that stuff, and I love talking about it. And so it's fun to talk to other people who like to talk about it.
We put some nuggets out there. I hope somebody was able to pick it up. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.